Oh, yeah, wait. It was before I went to.
I'm sorry. I'm just listening.
I thought that's great.
Bad chairs. I'll have to start coming by and double check. I said mine were. Yeah. Here's mine. Here's mine.
Need to remind everyone, it's about a 3-minute warning if anyone needs to sign up to speak tonight. All right, thank you. All right, sir.
Oh, Amanda, that was the schedule, what that one was.
It should say agenda packet right in the middle of it.
Right. Yeah.
It starts
No.
out.
Oh, it starts out with complicated.
Because you do that for the agenda.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was so confused.
I was the same way the first time.
That's going to be the biggest
I
story.
don't have my mouse with me.
That one's really necessary.
I'll make it.
And there's no way to know.
Gotta be steady.
Unfortunately.
Sorry.
Right here, so.
Meeting. Close that clock is.
Come down here.
Yeah.
This is around number 8. That was the YouTube.
I want to talk to you about.
All right, as soon as Mr. Briggs arrives, we will be ready to rock and roll.
Ready to what?
It is 7 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen, but we are awaiting the arrival of Commissioner Briggs to the meeting, and then we will begin the meeting. Okay. Happy to have everyone with us this evening on this nice chilly winter evening. So, yeah, I don't know if this is a matter of personal thing. Oh. I hope that's what the matter is. I hope that's what the matter is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, make a quick pit stop.
Good evening. Fine. We're holding for a couple of minutes. We have 2 commissioners that are indisposed. One. Where's our attorney? Ah, where's our attorney?
He must have forgotten what his name was. No side, no side.
Now hear voices.
Really?
Give you gentlemen a minute to get in, then we will bring the meeting to order.
Pit stops important.
Yes. All right. Stay awake. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to call the regular December meeting of the Madison County Board of County Commissioners in session. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now have a moment of silence. Thank you. I would like to take a moment of personal privilege, if I could, to read a statement that will be entered into the record. A copy of this is going to be provided to all the members of the board here this evening and will be emailed tomorrow to all employees of Madison County government. And Paul, I have a copy for you as well. Okay. It has been my honor and great pleasure to serve as your chairman of the Madison County Board of Commissioners this year. Our county has continued to make strong progress in many areas, including substantial improvement in our overall financial position, collection of property taxes, making county surplus property available for public purchase that reinvests in our community, the development of a prudent, balanced county budget, improved financial, personnel policies and practices that have all been approved by a unanimous vote of our board. We are all committed to successful economic development efforts that provided support for Advanced Super Abrasives new manufacturing facility in Mars Hill and other projects and partnerships that have great promise for the future. We have worked together in a bipartisan effort with our excellent county manager, Forrest Gillum, the finance, human resources, personnel, manager's office staff, and department heads and all of our dedicated county employees to continue progress across county services, developing a more efficient, responsible, and effective county government. As a commissioner, I approach my responsibilities and conduct my duties based on mutual respect, civil discussion, and putting all of the citizens of Madison County first. Looking at the big picture and the long term while also working to deal with the day-to-day issues and challenges of governance. When I accepted the chairmanship last December, I did so with the expressed view that leadership is best when practiced as a shared activity. I do not believe that any one individual owns an elected post. In the end, each of the five of us has a single, equal voice and vote. I also believe that the chairmanship should rotate on a regular basis. Today, I am honoring that commitment. I look forward to working with all of you as we continue in a bipartisan effort to move forward in this wonderful and blessed place where we are honored to have the opportunity to serve. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a great New Year to everyone. Mr. Attorney, I turn the meeting over to you, sir.
The first order of business would be the election of a chairman. I will open the floor for nominations.
Mr. Attorney, I nominate Wayne Brigman as the chairman for next year.
I'd like to nominate Matt Wakefield for chairman, please.
I would second Mr. Brigman's nomination.
Do we have any other nominations? Do I have a motion to close the floor for nominations?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Right. We will place, since this will be elected by majority vote, I will place the name of Wayne Brigman. All those commissioners who vote for Mr. Brigman, please signify by raising your right hand. Seeing 4. I think that is a majority, so that will be the end of that election. Next order of business will be the election of a vice chairman. I will turn that over to Mr. Brigman since we now have a chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Attorney. I will now open the floor for nominations for our vice chairman.
I nominate Matthew Waker
We have a
for
nomination.
vice chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Norris Gentry.
We have Norris Gentry. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the nomination cease.
second for the,
Second.
okay, we have a motion for the nominations to end at this point and a second. And we have Matt Wechtel and Norris Gentry for vice chairman. Matt Wechtel was nominated first, so all those in favor of Matt Wechtel, raise your right hand. All those opposed, raise your right hand. Well, we don't do that. Okay. Mr. Norris Gentry is the other candidate nominated. All those in favor of Norris Gentry, raise your right hand. Okay. Mr. Norris Gentry will be the vice chair. Now we will open the floor for appointment for our county attorney.
Mr. Chairman, I would nominate Mr. Donny Laws.
Second.
We have a nomination for Donny Laws. Any other nomination for county attorney?
I move that the nomination cease.
Okay, nominations cease. We have Donny Laws. All those in favor of Donny Laws for county attorney, raise your right hand. Okay, Mr. Laws. Appointment to the clerk of the board. I will now open the floor for the appointment to the clerk.
Mr. Chairman, I would nominate the current clerks in the same structure that we have had previously.
Second.
We have
We
a,
need that. We really don't need that. We don't really need that. Don't make them feel better.
so
I move that that motion be approved by acclamation.
okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Gentry for the appointment of the clerks to stand as it has been previously. That will be Amanda and Brooke. Okay. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. And then you should have in your packet there the 2018 schedule for our meetings. Everyone has had time to look at that. Any changes or anything for discussion on? Portion of them are on close to holidays or nothing on it. Should we look at that?
No, there is one in May that would need to be moved 1 week earlier.
Due to the primary election.
Yeah.
But
That's
we
the
will
only
have
conflict I
to
saw.
confirm the location on that.
So we will move that meeting to May the
Confirm date.
We're gonna be right in the middle of the budget and all those things. Do we want to change that now, Forrest, or wait and change that a little closer to see how it might need to work out for budget meetings instead?
I think for the sake of notice, it may make sense to do it now.
Okay.
I appreciate that, but
Would would you
okay.
prefer it to be moved a week up or a week back?
The first, yes.
The first.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is Tuesday the 1st.
Mhm.
And if we find out that this room is not available, we'll know far enough in advance to do what we need to do.
So I hear a motion to approve the 2018 Board of Commissioner meeting schedule with the change on the May 8th to May 1st.
So
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rice, second by Commissioner Gentry. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Schedule is approved. Number 2 on our list, the agenda approval. Anyone have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I will move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Commissioner Gentry moved that we approve the agenda. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Briggs. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Approval of November 14th regular and special meetings. Any discussion, changes, anything for that? Do I hear a motion to approve the November 14th regular and special meeting for 2017? Minutes.
So moved.
Okay. Have a motion by Commissioner Weckrell to approve the November 14th minutes. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gentry. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Minutes are approved. Public comment. We have no one signed up tonight for public comment. Ms. Rhea Hollars. She moved on me.
Gotta switch it up every now and again. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
First thing I'm talking to you tonight is about our 2017, June 30, 2017 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, AKA the County Audit. You have hopefully had a chance, most of you, to review your draft copy that was in your packet. A couple highlights I wanted to talk about before Travis comes up and tells you the information he needs to give you. If you want to follow along with me, please do. Page 3, under financial highlights. At the end of 2017, our combined ending fund balance was $8.4 million, which was a decrease of $2.6 million to the prior year. This was mainly due to school construction costs. This is approximately 63% of this fund balance, or $5.2 million, is restricted funds. I will reference you to page 13 regarding that number, which is Exhibit 3, listed on page 13, far right column, bottom third of the page is a section that has restricted numbers, so you can see what is in there. That includes the restricted by state statute, the remaining balance in unexpended and unappropriated school funds for the construction, the registered deeds automation fund, the 4042 funds for schools, the drug seizure fund and 911 fund, and the soil and water special fund. Back to page 3, the unassigned fund balance for the general fund, just the general fund, was $2.3 million. That is a 10.2% of the general fund expenditures, which is above the 8%, which is actually a little different. But last year that number was 7%, so we're making nice gains there. All right, on to page 6. The property tax collection rate increased to 95.88%, up from 95.41% the prior year. Thanks a lot in part to Donny and Lori in their efforts to push for those tax collections. Also, the sales tax income that we received was up $900,000, so that's helped our fund balance a lot. That's due to increased improvement in the economy and the state's allocation methods are changing. On to page 8. The general fund balance available for appropriation. This is the one that has to meet the state 8% rule. We had 21.4% of our general fund, which is awesome, related to expenditures. The total fund balance for the whole county was 29.2%. So well above the 8% minimum. I know Forrest and I are talking and working through coming up with a fund balance policy that would help us make sure that we are prepared for any future needs of the county. That 21% was $4.9 million. That's a nice number for us. That is up from last year, 17.5%. Also on this page,
And that includes 4042.
that does.
Yes.
That includes 4042 and any restricted money. That's all on that page. Let's move on to page 13 and 14. This is the governmental fund financial statements. Page 13 is the balance sheet, which I've already mentioned the restricted monies on there. And then exhibit 4 on page 14 is the revenue expenditure and changes in fund balance page. So you can see just the general fund, we had a 1.5 million in revenue over expenditures that went straight into our fund balance that is helping us grow that percentage. Total overall was a 2.6 million deficit, but that was due to those school construction costs that we're spending out that we don't get an asset on. Okay. Now, if you don't mind to turn to page 27, there's a lot of financial statements in here, and it's very overwhelming to look at the first few times when you're looking and where do these numbers go, and why don't, if I add all these statements together, why don't they all match? Because you noticed I glossed over exhibit 1 and 2. Those are a change in net position. Page 27 and 28 gives you a reconciliation of exhibit 1 and 2 to exhibit 3 and 4. So that's the change in net position versus the balance sheet approach. The main difference to that is in the net position statement, we look at depreciable assets like in a business plan. In normal government accounting, we don't look at stuff like that. We expense everything off. In the net position, we look at debt and accruals for pension liabilities and stuff like that we don't look at in normal government statements, okay? And the last thing I want to reference is on page 59 and 60. This is a supplement to exhibit 3 and 4. So there's a section in exhibit 3 and 4 labeled non-major government funds, and here are what is included in those: the fire district funds, occupancy tax, the revaluation fund, soil and water, and the 911.
Hold on, Rhea, let's catch up to you, please.
Sorry.
Give me page numbers again, please.
59 and 60.
59, 60. Thank you.
Mine are paperclip. I was hoping yours might be too.
All right, with it. Thank you.
Yes. So these numbers tie back to exhibit 3 and 4 in that non-major government fund, so you can see some detail there instead of just the total. I will note, and Travis will talk more about this, that the financial statements as a whole received an unmodified or a clean report stating that there were no major deficiencies or misstatements. So I'm super excited about that. And that's amazing. That's what I as an accountant strive for all the time, is that, clean presentation that everybody can look at it and see the same things that I intended to say and understand it with no misstatements. He also noted on page 70, which is the internal control report, that there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in the internal control and finance. That is not saying that there aren't small control deficiencies. We are a small department with a very limited number of employees, and that leaves us with some control deficiencies because we don't have the appropriate people to completely segregate all duties. Ideally, you would separate the person that has the authority to create employees, change pay rates, issue payroll, enter vendors, enter invoices, write checks, sign checks. We don't have enough personnel for all that. So we do the best we can to safeguard our assets. But he has noted in a report that, that's something we've always had, is that slight control deficiency on that. And the only way that I'm aware other than adding more personnel. Well, that's really the main way to take care of that, is adding personnel to help segregate those duties more. Page 73, he goes on to discuss the compliance side with Medicaid. We were all expecting the same sort of opinion we had last year on Medicaid, and that's what we got. Overall, though, I think it turned out better this year. We had 6 months of, I'm going to call it, rough time where they had the audit last year, and we're doing the same procedure, so we did have some findings. Page 78 discusses the question costs, and as I believe Connie presented last time, that all those questions costs from the 16 audit were cleared, and I anticipate the same for these question costs that we have on the 17 audit. And unless you guys have questions for me, I will turn this microphone over to Travis.
Sure. Thank you. Very, very well done.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, Board, thank you for allowing me to come back this year, and thank you for allowing our firm to serve as your auditors again for FY17. We've been your audit firm for a number of years now, and we certainly appreciate the opportunity to serve the county. Also say thank you to Rhea and the staff of the Finance Department, as well as Connie and the staff at DSS for their hard work and cooperation in completing the audit. The accounting standards, as well as the federal and state requirements, have made the audit process rather tedious and onerous. And the staff out here is always really responsive, and they always handle our requests with a great deal of professionalism and promptly, and we appreciate that. Our presentation is going to be brief. It'll mostly cover the 4 different audit opinions that we issued that are included in the financial statements. I think you all received of those financial statements late last week. We actually issued the final report yesterday. It did not change from the draft that you have. So we'll get official issued copies out to you soon, but the draft copy you have is essentially what the final version is going to look like. We hope you'll read through the financial statements if you haven't already. It will be the best 100 pages you'll read throughout the whole holiday season. I guarantee you that. It's a good read. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the numbers that are in there. Rhea's done a good job of that, but I am happy to answer any questions if anybody has any, either tonight or if you guys need to follow up with me or anybody else at our firm about anything that doesn't make sense or needs clarification. We're always happy to answer questions. So the 4 audit opinions issued, there's 4 of them in there. The first one is up near the front of the financial statement. It covers the financial statements and the disclosures. This report is similar to an audit report that would be issued in the private sector for a business or a nonprofit. And as Rhea mentioned, we issued an unmodified or clean opinion, which means that we believe the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The other 3 reports are all in the back of the financial statements in what's called the compliance section, and these are specific to governmental accounting and are required by governmental auditing and federal and state granting agencies. The first of those 3 is a report on internal control over financial reporting. Rhea referenced that one as well. It's also called a yellow book opinion or a governmental audit opinion. So as part of your audit, we review internal controls over financial reporting. That's primarily internal controls in and around the finance office to the extent necessary to perform our audit of the financial statements. We don't do a full review of internal controls. So what we do, the limited basis that we do review controls, any deficiencies or weaknesses that we note in that review would be noted in this report. And as Rhea mentioned, I'm happy to say that we had no findings related to internal controls over financial reporting. We did make a couple of recommendations that I'll talk about later, but nothing that rose to the level of a finding. The final 2 reports in the compliance section relate to compliance requirements applicable to each major federal and state program and internal control over compliance. This deals primarily with federal and state funding received at the county level through direct funding to the county to administer social services programs or direct benefit payments to citizens that are deemed eligible to receive those benefits. The largest federal program in this county, as probably all other counties in North Carolina, is Medicaid. You had approximately $40.5 million from federal and state sources flow into Madison County, mostly for the purpose of providing social service benefits to citizens. Approximately 34.5 out of this 40.5 was Medicaid related. So that's obviously where we spend the majority of our time during the audit. We did have 3 findings, internal control and compliance related to the Medicaid program. The first 2 are repeats from last year, while the third is new for FY17. So first, we examined a total of 80 Medicaid case files, looking for correct documentation to substantiate the county's eligibility determination. The state pays out the benefits, but the county is responsible for determining who's eligible. 10 out of these 80 did not contain sufficient documentation regarding residency, income, or liquid asset verification to support the eligibility decision at the time we reviewed the cases. 5 out of the 80 contained deviations related to the timeliness of the documentation. Now, it's important to note that out of these 10 cases cited for a lack of documentation at the time we looked at it, the county was eventually able to provide support to substantiate the eligibility claim on 9 out of those 10 cases. So that's important. It's not, we weren't paying benefits to 10 different folks that were ineligible. It was a lack of documentation, essentially. We also had 1 finding related to the second party review process. The county has a process in place for supervisors to review Medicaid cases that are processed by caseworkers. We found 2 instances out of 16 cases tested where the supervisor review identified errors in documentation, but there was no follow-up and correction subsequent to the county's internal review. And thirdly, we had a finding related, this is the one that's new for this year, a finding related to the process by which DSS caseworkers record and track the time that is charged to the state for reimbursement via the Form 1571. Essentially, caseworkers charge time in total for each program they work on every day. What the state requirement is that they document the individual cases that they work on within the program. And there's currently not a mechanism in place to document that. At least there wasn't at the time that we looked at it. I believe that Donny is working on getting something in place there. The first 2 findings, which are similar to last year, will, as Rhea mentioned, once again result in us rendering an adverse opinion on the county's compliance with requirements related to federal and state awards. This isn't unexpected given that the staff didn't receive our findings related to the FY16 audit until more than halfway through FY17. And then they needed additional time after that to implement the corrective action plan. So it stands to reason that a large part of what we tested during the FY17 audit had already occurred prior to receiving the FY16 findings. The hope would be that with more than a full year to have implemented corrective actions, that we'll see significant improvements in the results of this testing during next year's audit. So that basically covers the reports, excuse me, within the financial statements. We issue a second document, required auditor communications or a management letter. We also issued that yesterday. I don't think you all have seen that yet, but I'll cover the highlights of it. And then of course, once you get that document, if there's anything in there that you want to ask us about, feel free to do so, but I'll hit the highlights now. It communicates certain information about the auditor's responsibilities and the scope of our audit. It discusses the significant accounting policies of the county. There were no new policies that were adopted, and the application of current policies did not change during FY17. We noted no transactions entered into by the county for which there's a lack of authoritative accounting guidance, and based on our audit, it appears all significant transactions were recorded in the proper period or the proper fiscal year. Certain elements of your financial statements are always subject to estimate. Some of the more sensitive estimates affecting your financial statements include depreciation calculations, allowances for uncollectible receivables, and the most wishy-washy of those estimates is actuarial estimates that are used by the state to estimate your liability arising from the various post-employment benefit plans you participate in, such as the local government employees retirement system and the registered deeds pension fund. The state essentially takes what they determine to be the liability overall with those plans and divvies it up to each local government unit, and you report that as a liability. We did, as I mentioned before, have one additional recommendation that we didn't feel rose to the level of a finding, but we did mention it in the management letter. As Rhea mentioned, segregation of duties is always a challenge for small finance offices. In the past, the finance office hasn't been able to segregate duties to an optimum level due to the small size of the staff, and they probably still can't. And And while we acknowledge the staff's still small, it's not quite as small as it was a couple of years ago. So we believe there are a couple of opportunities to strengthen the checks and balances within the accounts payable and payroll functions by getting a couple more people involved in the process. Again, it won't be perfect, but incremental steps to making it better. So that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions, and we thank you for letting us serve as your independent auditor for FY17. I'll answer questions if you have any.
I want to thank you for coming out and spending time with Clayton and I the other day when you did your preview. We really appreciated that.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the time also.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just thank Mr. Keever and our finance staff and DSS staff for what they've done and getting good audit and some issues pointed out at DSS that, as Travis pointed out, a good bit of that we were partway through the year when they found out. They have made corrections since then. There is an enhanced corrective action plan. We've seen good results from what Director Harris has put in place out there with having verifications done of what caseworkers are putting into the system. She is enhancing that to be a zero tolerance system so that people will have first 9 months, everything's going to be reviewed. Then there will be self-review and go on from there. They have made significant progress there and will continue to. The finding on day sheets they agree with and will implement. Ms. Harris did want to point out that the state, and I'll talk to y'all later about the state and DSS and how all that's working. They have never been notified by the state that that was a necessity. They'll fix it. But there are a number of issues with DSS, including going to all these findings and the level of the state support that's been provided. Madison County is going to fix what we can fix, and we'll do that. But there have definitely been some holes at the state level with their implementation of MC Fast and other functions. And regarding recommendations in finance, like Travis said, we can't make it perfect, but we will look at if we can rearrange and address part of that. We will. We can't address all of it, but we'll always look at how we can. If there's a way to make it better, we're going to do it.
And Ford, if I could just add just a second. Norris and I sit on the DSS board, and routinely we sit there each month and listen to kind of what's taking place. And they really have a tough job at DSS trying to comply with what the state is trying to send out and trying to require of them. Very little direction, very little help. North Carolina Fast, NC Fast, was a nightmare, to say the least. Would you agree, North?
Completely.
And I'm not defending DSS, but it's just unfortunate that we have folks sitting somewhere handing out the rules and they don't have a clue what they're talking about. And we also have another program called Fast Tracks. And pretty much the same thing with that. We have asked Connie extensively, the director, questions, trying to get to the bottom line. We don't sit there and rubber stamp the board meetings. We try to get in depth into what's going on. But it's a very tough job to do your job when you're chasing a moving target. And the state, for whatever reason, the leadership in that particular piece of the state government is significantly lacking, in my opinion. And North, anything?
No, just it is a continuing struggle. Our folks are making dedicated efforts, appropriate actions, as you have indicated, and as Forrest has indicated, and Connie reported to us last month. We will do everything we can to comply, and it is a huge program. The numbers that you mentioned, just in Medicaid alone, come close to twice the county's normal operating budget. And the amount of caseload that these individuals carry and the amount of bureaucracy to administer that, good, hardworking folks, and recognize the issues that need to be addressed. They will be addressed, they are being addressed. Sure, think anybody else would? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Well done.
Okay. Ms. Melanie Morgan.
I have a quick resolution. I'm requesting the resolution of authorizing the conveyance of books to the Friends of the Library. Madison County Public Libraries request that the director of the Madison County Public Libraries or their designee is authorized to donate discarded or community donated books and or materials on a rolling basis without consideration to the Friends of the Library, on the condition that the Friends of the Library shall use the sale of proceeds for the public purpose of benefiting the county libraries. And the clerk to the Board of Commissioners shall publish a notice summarizing this resolution in compliance with the North Carolina General Statute 168-279 and 168-267. Any questions?
How much surplus do you usually get in a yearly basis?
Really depends. We have been preparing for Cardinal, so we are doing more discards in this previous year. Discard probably from, this is just an estimate, probably about, I would say, 500 to 800 items each year of books. However, those books are in very sad condition. They're out of date. They're not factual any longer, and just in poor condition. And in addition to that, that is also items that are donated to the library. Right. So many people clean out their homes and bring all their books to the library, and so we can't add all those materials to our collection because it would devalue the collection. So we do get those to the Friends for book sales.
Okay. Any questions, Melanie?
Mr. Chair, having reviewed the resolution, I move that we approve the resolution as submitted.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion from Commissioner Waker for approval of the resolution, second by Commissioner Gentry. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to recognize Melanie she was just in Winston-Salem last week. First time accepting, but the second year in a row that the North Carolina Public Library Directors Association awarded Madison County Team Programming Award. So appreciate your work and your staff work on that. And hope everybody has seen Madison County's bookmobile in the December edition of our state. So,
Thank you.
Good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mel.
Mr. Donny Law.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have this month's tax report. I'm happy to say that the last of the English properties up at Wolf Law have been taken care of. Taxes were paid in full on English 23 Properties LLC. This report is going to reflect what I told you last month, is that we're in a transition phase of transitioning from the older taxes that we have done a good job of collecting over into more recent years. I've spoken with Lori and she is getting to me the more recent years when she did not get them this month for good reason. As all of you know, in Madison County, December is when we collect the majority of taxes for the current year, and her staffing situation there is that she is just doesn't have the time to get those to me, which is fine with us. we'll close out the ones that we have, and then we'll be ready starting the new year to move over into a different direction. We do have, you'll see here the results of the 5 properties that were sold on November the 17th. We do have 2 additional pieces that we'll be adding to our surplus property. That's the LJJ Ventures lot and the Jeff Bernier lot. Of course, English 23 was redeemed. We do have 1 file with a substantial amount of taxes owed on that in the neighborhood of $25,000. But it was relieved from bankruptcy court. We are going through the process of filing that claim and attempting to obtain a release from the bankruptcy court to proceed with that one. And then the last one, the Arrington there, we do have that was sold to a private bidder, and that amount will be sufficient enough to clear the county out together with all cost on that one. So I should be able to report on that next month, so it's showing that it has been closed out. So what we have on here is, I think, pretty well anticipated as what we were going to be receiving in December. And we'll gear up for the 3rd and 4th quarters.
Okay.
Do we have any questions?
No.
All right. Thank you.
Good job, Donny.
Brooke?
Hi there.
Hello.
Okay, I've got 2 personnel items for y'all tonight. The first is at the health department. It is for a full-time environmental health specialist position. So this has been open for quite a while. It's a highly specialized vacancy. And it's taken us just a little bit of time to find the right person. Thank you for, in the budget season, going ahead and transitioning that position from a part-time to a full-time position. That really helped us a lot. And so after months of searching, and Director Tammy Cody at the health department putting together a really good team of interviewers, they have recommended that we hire Luann Jenkins for the full-time environmental health specialist position.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the recommendation of Rhea Luann Jenkins for the environmental health specialist full-time position.
I'll second it. We have a motion, Commissioner Rice, second by Chairman Brigman, for the appointment of Lou Ann Jenkins for the environmental health specialist. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed?
Thank you. So in the second and final thing that I've got for y'all tonight is out of the child support department. As y'all know, we've been doing a little bit of restructuring in that department, and we've recently promoted someone new to the director of that department. We're really excited. And as we work through how we're gonna finish staffing that office, we are looking for some on-call kind of help, just, call someone up and have them come work in the office, answering phones, making copies. And so what we've got is we've had someone in that role for a while, but they've been on a contract, and we need to move them to a regular part-time employee. So through our payroll system, not through the 1099 contract system. And so who we're recommending is who has held that position in the past, and it's Emily Worley.
Madam Chair, I will recommend that we employ Emily Worley in that position, sir.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion, Commissioner Gentry, second by Commissioner Briggs, for the employment of
Worley? Emily Worley.
Emily Worley for the part-time position in child support. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, motion passed, majority.
Before I go, I'll just make one last plug. We've got several openings. If you check our website, madisoncounty.org, please go check out everything we've got. I'll be up here saying your name next month.
Thank you, Brooke. All right, Rhea.
You guys haven't gotten rid of me yet tonight.
All right.
I am here tonight with the monthly finance officer reports. First on my agenda list is the November 2017 financial report for your review.
Rhea, can you hit the highlights on that for us, just for the benefit of the folks in the audience and people at home that don't have the benefit of seeing what we're looking at?
Sure, I will do my best. So we've had I think a pretty good collection month as far as property taxes. Total revenue for the month of November is 3.1 million. Year to date, that puts us at 9.3. Expenses, and this is all general fund. Totals month to date expenses of 1.1 million. Year to date 8.2, which puts totals. Total at this point in time for the month of 1.9 million revenue over expense and a 1 million year to date revenue over expense. Now we all know that revenues come in heavy between now and in December, so that revenue will carry us a little while, hopefully a good while. And you will also see the bank balances on our total unassigned and unrestricted, so not available, but unassigned and unrestricted bank balance is $6 million. If we wanted an available, let me do some math, sorry, I should put this on there for you. 8.3 million in available for spending, which includes restricted money like 4042 and unspent grant.
Okay.
But keep in mind, all that has a specific purpose behind it. The landfill, we are sitting with the landfill month to date revenues of 400,000, year to date of just under $1 million, and then expenses of 100,000 for the month, and year to date 787,000. So for total 300,000 month to date revenue over expense and 200,000 year to date. Again, those collections of those disposal card fees are heavy for this month and next month.
Can I ask on page 5 of that, when we're in the landfill here on page 5 of your report,
Yes, sir.
the electronics are at 341% of budget. Am I reading that correctly?
You are reading that correctly.
Okay. And this is for the electronic recycling?
Yes, sir.
We have a grant for that.
That is a revenue number, so.
Yeah.
That's the revenue we got.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
And then lastly, you've got the 911 on the last page. And this is just their special fund. There's a portion of 911 that is the dispatch is included in the general funds. This is just their PSAP and CAD system. They're at a month gain of $9,800 and a year-to-date gain of $10,000. We are 41.67% through our budget year.
Rhea, thank you for
Rhea.
the more detailed analysis and for also presenting us some of those numbers which are more traditional so that we get a better feel for really what our fund balances are and what the available
Absolutely.
funds are. And, I know we'd all requested that, but I know it's a lot of extra work on top of everything else you do. And again, congratulations on a 0 finding of the finance office. I don't think many people realize how significant that is. That's a major compliment to you and everyone else that deals with that.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. I would pass that along to Carrie and the rest of everybody else in our office. So, any other questions on the financial statement before we move on to the checks? Okay. You also have a list of vendors that we have paid throughout the month.
The hot springs wastewater lines that we paid in there, was that just a pass-through for us?
It was grant funds, I believe.
Any more questions for her on that? Yeah. Questions?
Force, was that the Pigeon River money?
Probably, yeah.
Next thing I've got is budget amendment number 6 for your review and approval.
Any questions? Rhea on budget amendment number 6? Okay.
I move that we approve of budget amendment number 6.
Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Gentry to approve budget amendment number 6. There's a second? I'll second. Okay, motion for budget amendment number 6. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Last thing I have for you, gentlemen, is the November 2017 tax releases.
I think it's before.
There it is.
Here it is. Here it is. Yeah.
Pretty good way down through there.
Mhm.
It's just one page, correct?
Yes.
Sir.
Yeah, those are much cleaner than we used to put it.
I'm making sure I wasn't missing something.
Any questions or discussion for Rhea on the November 2017 tax release? Okay. You got a motion?
Like I'm doing a bunch of it tonight. I
Go
move
ahead.
that we approve the the tax releases for December. November, I'm sorry, November.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gentry for the approval of November 2017 property releases for December 2017 meeting. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Rice. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Last thing I would like to mention that as of today, all November, all rents have been received through November, so
Excellent.
Okay.
thank you,
Those
John.
ones should have paid December, but hasn't. Right.
Okay. All right.
Well, Force on the library cistern project, or Melanie, when's that gonna begin?
It's waiting for the state approvals on
Okay.
final things, but we're hoping March 2018.
Thank you.
Okay. Force?
Mr. Chairman, a few things. Rhea did a good job of covering the audit and detailed report there that's very helpful. And audit is kind of our final report card, not just on how we're doing on a lot of important details and whether we're going, looking at people's number outlay, but it's also showing how our budget, when fully implemented at the end of the year, is doing. And you all have adopted, if you remember the budget that you adopted for that year would have been in June of 2016, and made a goal of under projecting revenues, making sure that any revenues from back taxes above what was normally collected, sale of property, all those types of one-time things, that we put those toward one-time expenses, that we try to control expenses as best we could, and you end up at the end of the year with 1.5 million in revenues over expenditures. That's exactly what you intended to do in some form or fashion. 2 years before that, you had a $500,000 shortfall from the budget that was adopted in June 2014. So good progress is being made there. Rhea talks about fund balance and it's confusing. There's an unassigned fund balance, which is the number I look at. That's the number at the end of the year in funds that we have that have no restrictions. That doesn't include 4042. It's not earmarked for anything. That's counties to spend in accordance with what's allowed to be spent on. We're at 10.26% of our general fund expenditures. That's up from 7%. That's a total increase in 1 year of $864,000. That's the highest percentage of that fund balance we've had since the year ending 2014. It's a total of $2,389,779. That's great, but I'll point out that year ended 2014 when it was at 12.6%, and we had a $700,000 jump that year by adopting a budget in June of 14 that spent those monies on salaries and additional positions and over projecting other revenues. The number plummeted the following year down to about 7%. So we're doing well, we're on the right path, but we're still very tight with what we have available to us. But you're doing the right thing in what you're adopting, because when we do have that money come in, it's fine to spend from fund balance, just like it's fine to spend from your savings if you know you're spending it on a one-time, non-recurring item. And that's what you'll be talking about next week, looking at capital projects, things of that nature. How do we plan that and move forward, starting as soon as this year, but looking at the long run. That property tax collection rate hit 95.88%. You remember back in 2012, it was 90.5%. That's $608,000 in revenue, recurring revenue that's come to the county because of increased collection efforts. Had we stayed at 90.5% for the last several years, we would have had to increase taxes. You would have had to increase taxes 3.5 cents to make that same amount of money. So you are helping all those who were already paying by the new policy that you all have put in place. Good audit, good movement, but we've got a long way to go, particularly on this year's budget, which Rhea mentions. It's looking good on revenues so far, but we never know on property taxes. There could be a lot of early payments, there could be a lot of late payments. We really got to get through December and January to see how that goes. Other items of update outside of the audit and budget, you all read the Mars Hill, town of Mars Hill Recycling. They decided in November to cease curbside recycling pickup. When our solid waste department was notified of the change, they worked to adjust their schedules of our recycle truck drivers so we could pick up cardboard from businesses in Mars Hill that had previously been served by the town. That's in order to minimize the reduction in revenues to the county for cardboard, as well as the school system's penny a pound program. County also picked up 2 recycling trailers that we owned that the town had previously used for curbside pickup. There were 3 trailers. The town owned 1, and we owned 2. Those trailers will be repurposed at our collection centers. Since that time, the town has decided to resume curbside pickup. They've got their own system going, and that's good because it protects the service for the citizens of Mars Hill. It will help the town get some money back for their costs there. So it's understandable why the town would want to do that. It does have an impact on the county. Slight, we think, from a revenue standpoint. When we calculate it, we think it's really probably just a few $1,000s that we're getting from the curbside pickup for the county, but there will be an impact. When you look at our total recycling revenue from what we're selling and our total and what we're avoiding sending to Tennessee, you've got a benefit of $152,000. Our collection centers will continue to take recyclables, and you saw in the paper sort of how the system working and I attended a meeting. We talked about a couple of findings in our audit regarding DSS. There was a meeting last week, a regional meeting that was sponsored by the NC Association of County Commissioners, the School of Government, and the Social Services Directors Association. Child Welfare 101 was the title of the day-long conference, and I attended, as well as Connie Harris and our social work manager, Elaine Edwards. And we had a good day there, looking at some potential changes the state is looking at making to how all of that works. As Travis mentioned, of course, he was talking about some of the benefits payment, but it works the same way with all services at DSS. They're delivered at the local level. All the rules are made at the state level. Funding comes from the feds through the state. We administer it. Not all states are like that. A lot of those centralize at the state level, and there's been legislation introduced that would do that. Now that got scaled back into a 2 or 3 year study, and that working group was really the focus of this meeting. They're looking at establishing some regional service centers that used to be in existence years ago. That, from hearing from DSS folks at this meeting from our county and other counties, if they're working like they used to, that would be a good thing. It would provide more support for the region. No one knows yet what those will look like. There's also talk about regionalizing some departments and services, and how does that impact service to citizens, and how does it impact budgets for multiple counties when you have differing pay scales and differing budgets in each county. So they're working through that. They have several benchmarks that work group is working on through 2020, but some common themes that were heard throughout the day from DSS professionals as well as court professionals: an overburdened system, from social services to the court system. It's tough on everyone involved there to be able to keep up with what needs to happen. Disparities in funding across the state for salaries for DSS employees and funding levels. Turnover everywhere, even in the best funded counties, it's a high turnover job. Buncombe County was sitting in the room, everybody there was saying these big counties do their thing, take our people. We have seen some of that, though our turnover rate at DSS has been cut in half in the last 2 years. Buncombe County raised their hand and say, well, here's our turnover rate. It's a difficult profession, and we have to do what we can to try to be supportive at the local level and work through that state level to make sure they know how they can best support us and improve things instead of making them worse sometimes when you're trying. And who knows where they're headed, and we'll keep you updated on what's going on there. One update related to DSS, there's probably saw in the paper, I'm seeing an email, an Andy Buckner concert to raise money for Madison County foster care that was scheduled for this past Saturday. It's been rescheduled for this Wednesday, December 20th, 7 o'clock at the depot. That's $10 admission. Funds go to Christmas gifts for children who are in foster care in Madison County. I believe that's about 86 kids, last number that I saw. You cannot attend Wednesday night. Consider making a donation there for those gifts.
What would be the best way to do that for us?
I would just make a check to Madison County Foster Care and get it to DSS or get it to our office, either one. Detail for this room and the January meeting, renovations are going on in this building. You can tell the heat and everything has changed. This building's very warm. This room's very warm. The other room's very cold. They're working through that. But as part of the renovation stage, they'll be working on the AV room in this auditorium in January, and that will impact our ability to stream the meeting. The IT will set up in the back row or two and still be able to film the meeting. and put it online as soon as possible after that meeting's over so that anyone can watch it. But the live streaming during the actual meeting will not be available because they won't have the network connection they need. And we'll put a notice on our website there. We found just a handful of people are watching during the meeting. Most prefer our on-demand option and watch it another time. But we will get through that in January, and just want to let that be known in advance. We'll post it on the website. A couple of things with building maintenance. Maintenance director and inmate crew worked through Thanksgiving on finishing the installation of floor tile in the last remaining hallway where that project had started in the spring. At social services, we had an issue come up this summer where we lost all our inmates for a month, and that slowed everything down. We got those back, and we've been catching up ever since. And that's going well. Now they're working on a few offices at a time to finish that area. Then there is carpet replacement on the admin side, which also includes the Child Protective Services Hall. That work will be done on weekends. They're working to squeeze this in between other projects that are going on, and they're still down a position from having a vacancy from when the current director was promoted. But I want to compliment Jesse for seeing all that through and working on that and hoping to catch up as quick as he can. The courthouse, the maintenance has removed the old furniture from the former cashier's office down there, and they'll going to try to spend a day a week for the next month on demolition in there, counters and partitions. There's a server room in there that you don't want to dust up. So the administrative office of the court's been trying to get this meeting through Mark Cody since before Thanksgiving, and he finally got AOC to agree. They're coming down next Tuesday or Wednesday, and IT and maintenance and Mark and AOC and I are meeting to talk about what we need to do to move that server room to the third floor, get that process going, at which point maintenance can work on more demo and refinishing of the old cashier's office. I've mentioned y'all before that the budget for this year doesn't have anything for courthouse renovations, but we did set aside money for capital outlay. So at your meeting next week, we'll look at how we can use that capital outlay fund to what we'll do this year and what we'll do next year. So we will figure that out and get that done. But that's how we'll approach that. Any questions on any of that? In your packet, you will see a memo from Sarah in Economic Development about the One North Carolina grant for the Advanced Super Abrasives project. You all approved a local incentive back in October. Local tax incentive. At the time, we mentioned the $100,000 One North Carolina grant, and we have prepared for this grant and now need approval to proceed with it. It's a $100,000 grant from the state that has a 50% match from the county, but that match can come from the local tax incentive that we're already doing. So there's no additional funds required from the county. Thanks to our legislature, our match level is lower for our tiered county than it was a few years ago. They did some tweaks to try to help small counties. So a tier 2 county has a smaller match. Buncombe County would have, I think, a 75% match. Yancey County, if y'all have gone back to tier 1, I don't know where y'all are. A tier 1 county would have to pay less. Tier 2's in between. So if you all could approve entering into the grant, $100,000 1NC grant for that project, and authorize me to sign any documents for that.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the 1NC grant. And a second.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Gentry. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Surplus property, the first item, the rock building in Mars Hill. As y'all know, you accepted a $73,550 offer back in August. That property, at that time, it had been advertised through the upset bid process. There was a 90-day due diligence period. Extended that by 45 days at your October special meeting. That's going to expire in the next week or so. The buyer is working through the zoning process with the town of Mars Hill. No indication of whether that will work out or not, but it's gonna take longer no matter what. So I've got a recommendation that you extend that due diligence for 60 days or within 15 days of any approval of zoning, whichever sooner.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we take the manager's recommendation.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Gentry, second, who seconded? Second by Commissioner Weckel on the surplus property of the rock building of the extension recommended. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those in favor. All right.
Next item, at your November meeting, you considered a $100,000 offer on the breakaway property in the Wolf Laurel section. That, at the time, you had that $100,000 offer from Mr. Chris Shaw. At that time, you all voted to counter his offer at $320,000. I've spoken with Mr. Shaw several times since then and communicated with each of you all. And he now has an offer of $205,000 for your consideration.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend that we approve the $205,000 offer.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Gentry, second by Commissioner Briggs for the approval of the $205,000 for the property discussed. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
And it's not necessary for the motion, but just to remind you that will be advertised for upset.
Yes.
Like everything, that process. Next, you have surplus property lots 101 and 101B. You had previously had something come close, and then after the buyer had started to use the property before closing, canceled that contract, had a new offer of $3,500 on that same piece of property, those same pieces. And this would have to start over the process.
This is a different purchaser,
Different
I assume?
purchaser, yes.
No affiliation to the original.
Doesn't appear so.
I move we start the bidding,
Second.
accept the offer and start the upset bidding.
Okay, Commissioner Briggs made the motion to accept the $3,500 offer on these two pieces, these two lots, lots 101 and 101B, second by Commissioner Weckel. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
And the final surplus property item is Bear River Lot 84. At the November meeting, we had a $5,000 bid, countered at $5,300. Bidders agreed to that price and proceeded with the upset process. That has ended with no upsets. So that $5,300 offer is here for your final acceptance, which would start a due diligence period. It's finished, we will close on that property.
I move we accept the $5,300 offer.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Gentry, second by Commissioner Briggs to accept the $5,300 offer on Bear River Lot 84. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Next, you have board appointments. December's the end of the year, so several appointments are expiring. They're all eligible for reappointment. I have a list in front of you with members whose terms are up in the Board of Adjustment, Planning Board, the Watershed Review Board, and Juvenile Crime Prevention Council.
Mr. Attorney, those can be approved in a uniform motion, is that correct?
Okay.
I will move that we approve them in a uniform motion as presented.
I have a motion by Commissioner Gentry to approve the board vacancies. I hear a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Rice. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed?
Got that one waiting. That's a good idea. Good deal.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Forrest.
Any other business from the board? No? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Chairman, I move we adjourn.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gentry to adjourn. I hear a second. Second by Commissioner Briggs. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's 8:17 p.m. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah,
Thank
blessed
y'all for
holidays to
coming.
all.
Ray, you gotta sit down here closer. I can't get used to you sitting. Ray's gotta sit down here closer.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can't. You gotta start sitting down in your seat.
Thank you, sir.
So